and welcome to the Ice Guys, brought to you by the Hockey Podcast Network. This is the show that takes you into the world of the National Hockey League. Every game, every day, from a sports betting perspective, with pro handicappers Alex B. Smith and veteran sports writer Jimmy Murphy. And now, here's your host, Ian Cameron.
Welcome to the Ice Guys, presented by the Hockey Podcast Network, Friday, October 8th, and it is part 2 of our season betting preview shows to get you ready for opening night coming up on Tuesday. If you missed yesterday, what we did in our first season premiere show, we talked Eastern Conference yesterday. The show is still available. Always, every episode is up on YouTube if you missed it. And of course, we've got every episode also available in podcast form. You can download the podcast daily, just like last year, any podcast platform, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, you name it. You can find the podcast on all those great platforms. Today, we turn our attention now to the Western Conference, and we're joined here by Alex B. Smith. Before we get into the Western Conference and everything with all the teams and breaking it down, season win totals, futures, just overall team analysis, bet on, bet against, will they go over or under in their games, that kind of thing. It's a big day for Alex. He loves his Chicago teams, Blackhawks, Bears, and of course, the White Sox, who, of course, are playing a big playoff game today, game 2 of their ALDS against the Houston Astros. And it's a big one for the White Sox because you get the sense if they go down 2-0 to a team with the pedigree and experience of the Astros, it's going to be a tough uphill battle to win 3 straight against them. So it is a big one today for his White Sox. And we are recording this show just as game 2, the first pitch, is about to get thrown here in this one. Alex, how are you feeling? Confidence level when it comes to your White Sox today?
Well, I think they'll be able to bounce back. I mean, the bats have to wake up. That's the bottom line. Obviously, and everyone's questioning, should Lance Lynn have started game 1, knowing how bad he usually does against Houston? And you got to put it aside now. You got Giolito on the bump today, and like I said, hopefully the bats can wake up. Giolito can control the game and make this a 1-1 series going back to Chicago on Sunday.
Absolutely. So definitely, Alex, if you hear him drifting off and it's like, Alex, we asked you a question here. Yeah, you know why that is. Yeah, it's because the White Sox are playing in the background. So that's all right. Alex is good like that. He'll be all right. Before we get into all the stuff about the Western Conference and talking teams, I did tease on Twitter that I was going to bring up, and I want to do it now before I forget, because at the end of the show, we want to end by then, and we'll probably forget if I wait till the end of the show. I got to bring up this commercial that's driving me nuts for the last year. We've seen it. We're all in the same boat as people that watch a lot of sports. We're basically stuck with seeing the same TV commercials over and over and over again. It's endless. It doesn't matter if you're in Canada like me. It doesn't matter if you're in the States like Alex. It doesn't matter. You are going to see the same commercials over and over again, especially if you watch a shit ton of sports, which we all do. And unfortunately, here in Canada, we've been blessed with this Leo Vegas online casino ad for the last year. They showed it all last year during the hockey season, and now they've cranked it up again here in the preseason of the NHL the last couple of weeks with the regular season starting. And it's basically a commercial with the former Toronto Maple Leaf legend, Matt Sundin. Now, he is one of the best Toronto Maple Leaf players of all time. There's no question about that. So I guess he's got some kind of deal with Leo Vegas, and he's doing an ad for them. And the first line he utters, he's got the hockey stick in his hand. He's got talking to the mascot of Leo Vegas in a lion outfit. And he basically says the first line of that commercial, and I laugh my ass off every time I hear it. I used to captain one of the best NHL teams of all time. And when that's the line, Alex. Matt Sundin says, I used to captain one of the best NHL teams of all time. And every time I hear that, I just absolutely lose it. I can't help but I'm like a little kid. I'm like, ha, 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 just chuckling and laughing and just think it's the funniest thing I've ever heard. And I want to clear up why I think that is, because the reason why I think that is such a bad statement for him to make in that commercial is because my definition of what constitutes as the best or the greatest NHL teams of all time is clearly different from Matt Sundin. I have a feeling, Alex, when either he suggested saying that line on the commercial or the people at Leo Vegas said, all right, Matts, we'll give you the script. Here's what you're going to say. And I think in their minds, they thought that him saying I used to captain one of the best NHL teams of all time meant I used to captain one of the most storied franchises of all time, one of the longest running franchises in the NHL.
Yeah.
One of the biggest fan bases and most popular teams in the NHL, if not all of sports, just because of just how big the Maple Leaf brand is and how passionate and hardcore and big the fan base is. I think that's probably what he was getting at when he said, I used to captain one of the best NHL teams of all time. But that's not the way I think of it when I think of best and greatest NHL teams of all time. And if I'm going to hear someone say that, you know what I think of? I think of greatness. I think of winning. I think of merit. I think of accomplishment. I think of playoff wins. I think of championships. I think of dynasties. That's what I think of when it comes to the best and the greatest NHL teams of all time. And so I think the wording got fucked up on that commercial. You can't use that kind of wording in my mind because to me, best and greatest teams of all time. Now, Matt Sundin was on some great Leafs teams, no doubt. In fact, the last time they won a playoff series, Matt Sundin was on the damn team, 2004. That's how long ago. Great runs. They made the playoffs every year. Him and Curtis Joseph and Ed Belfour were their goalies, and Gary Roberts, Joe Nieuwendyk were on the Leafs back then. Sundin, a young Brian McCabe in his prime on the blue line. Great teams. And they won multiple first rounds, which this current Leaf Corps is still trying to figure out how to do, and they won a couple second rounds. They got to the conference finals twice. Unfortunately, they lost both times. They got to the conference finals with Matt Sundin there. So they had great teams, no question. But he just didn't use the right wording there. I'm sorry, you cannot say I used to captain one of the best NHL teams of all time because I equate best into accomplishments and dynasties and teams that had a sustained run of dominance and success and at least contending for championships, if not winning championships. Because the way I define one of the best and greatest teams of all time, Alex, and he says that, if I'm the 70s Canadians, I'm thinking, well, what about us then? If I'm the 80s Islanders with Bossy and Potvin and Al Arbor, the head coach, I'm thinking, what about us then? If I'm the 80s Oilers with Messier and Gretzky and Curry and Anderson and Grant Fuhr, I'm thinking, what about us then? If Matt Sundin's here flapping his gums about the greatest teams of all time, what about the 80s Oilers? What about the 80s Islanders? What about the 90s Detroit Red Wings? Hell, even more recently, Alex, what about your 2010 decade Chicago Blackhawks?
Yeah.
What are they thinking if they're hearing Matt Sundin? If they think best and greatest is the same definition I do, when he's talking on that ad, what are the Blackhawks thinking? Could you imagine Patrick Kane sits down and decides, I'm going to put the television on, sees that Leo Vegas ad, and here's Matt Sundin talking about, I used to captain one of the best and greatest teams of all time. He's probably thinking, well, what the fuck about my team then? The last 10 years. What does that make us? What does that make me and Johnny Taves and everybody, Corey Crawford, Duncan Keith, Brent Seabrook, and all those Blackhawks teams? If he's talking about his teams being some of the best and greatest of all time, what the hell does that make my Blackhawks teams for the last years? The current Tampa Bay Lightning, that have won back-to-back cups now, going for a third, and consistently a top, 3 or 5 team in the NHL the last 5 years plus. I think they'd have a little something to say, if they believed that what Matt Sundin was saying about best and greatest truly was the definition based on greatness and accomplishment and winning. So that's my rant about that. It's just didn't come off right, him saying that. I used to captain one of the best NHL teams of all time because to me, best means winning. It means success. It means championships. He probably meant it as one of the most popular franchises, longest running, longest established teams in sports and the NHL, you name it, original 6 team. He should have said it in that. He should have phrased it that way. Or the Leo Vegas people who fed him that script or fed him that line, if they are the ones that came up with it, they should have phrased it in a different manner. Because to me, there's nothing best and greatest about anything to do with the Toronto Maple Leafs for the last 54 years. A team that hasn't won a Stanley Cup. The last time they won a Stanley Cup, folks, black and white television was still around. That's how bad it is. And you think of the fact that technology, Alex, and look at how far it's come. We have seen technology just go crazy since the last time the Toronto Maple Leafs won a Stanley Cup. Look at all that's happened. We got color television. We got the 8-track. We got cassette tapes. We got freaking CD players, DVD players, Walkmans. The internet came on board. We got MP3 players. We have cell phones where we can communicate with each other and watch videos. We have high definition television. We have 4K television now. We've got all these amazing technological advancements for the last 50 years, and all the while not one Stanley Cup championship for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And for that reason, Matt Sundin, you can't say stuff like that. Sorry. You can't do it. Can't take it. Can't listen to it. I don't want to hear anything about, I used to captain one of the best NHL teams of all time. Should have been worded differently. You should have said it differently. The defense rests your honor.
Yeah, good point. Like I said, this commercial, I haven't seen this commercial, and I know someone in the chat was mentioning, look it up. I have to look it up on YouTube as well. But yeah, it's just like you said, that was just completely, it should have been worded a lot better. Like I said, they should have meant, historic franchise instead of, like you said, great teams. But that nonetheless, that's pretty funny, and it's actually just kind of funny just seeing a lot of these commercials now with former players, and especially these betting commercials have been very strange. I don't know what's with all the betting commercials, at least here, having all these different comedians. Like you got JB Smooth and the Caesars commercial. You got Jamie Foxx for BetMGM. I wonder, like, what's the context of having all these comedians promoting, different betting commercials? I wonder.
It's happening everywhere. I mean, it really is, and we shouldn't be surprised. I mean, it's becoming, it's blown up in the mainstream beyond anything I could have ever imagined. You've got friggin' Damon Allen, Matt Dunnigan, legendary CFL players now, CFL ads. You see Bet Regal promoting that. I mean, you've got, former players. You got Allen Iverson, yes, doing, betting promotions for some sites now as well. So it's endless, and it's because, the onslaught's here now. Everybody is wanting to see, or everybody wants a piece of the pie, and they're using basically former athletes, to basically promote their book, promote their product. And you're seeing that right now across the board. And Matt Sundin, Leo Vegas is more like online casino, like, slot games, casino, all the typical online casino site, but same kind of thing though, promoting betting, no doubt. But bottom line is we're going to hear that commercial, guys, a million more times throughout the season here in Canada. And I laugh there's not a time I've seen that commercial come on television. I haven't laughed when I've heard that line. He's like, I used to captain one of the best NHL teams of all time. And I'm like, it's just like a belly laugh. It's just like, oh my gosh, because like I said, I explained what my definition of best and greatest is, and yeah, it doesn't equate with what Matt Sundin said there. So that's why I get the laugh out of that. So beware, we're going to see that a lot this year here in Canada. All right, let's turn our attention to some hockey. Let's turn our attention to the Western Conference. We're going to start in the Central Division with our previews here of the Western Conference, and kind of like yesterday. We really don't want to spend too much time on the dregs, on the absolute worst teams in the NHL. So we're going to make it quick. Now, keep in mind, the team we're going to talk about first here, Arizona Coyotes, Alex, they're in the Central Division now. I mean, most people probably know that because of realignment. Seattle entering the NHL this year, that Arizona was realigned over to the Central Division this year. But this Arizona team will start there. They're basically Buffalo and Columbus of the West. I mean, the roster is just so very, very thin. And you look at the players that were jettisoned out from this Arizona Coyotes team in the offseason. I mean, it's a complete personnel turnover. Connor Garland gone, Michael Bunting gone, Antti Raanta, Darcy Kemper, Christian Dvorak, Alex Goligoski, Nicholas Hjalmarsson, Jordan Osterley, John Hayden, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, or Oliver Lawsome Tossum, as our good buddy Don Cherry would say. That is an enormous amount of previous players and old faces from last year gone. And you look at the roster, I mean, it's just very, very thin. I mean, they're going to have to hope Phil Kessel has a huge year. They're going to have to hope Clayton Keller in a top-line role plays consistently. He sometimes has these little spurts of good play, and then he can go in a long drought as well. He's not going to be able to have that luxury this year with how thin this forward group is for the Arizona Coyotes. Ryan Dzingel, a guy that's, plays well, plays hard. I kind of like that addition. But you look at this blue line now with Ekman-Larsson gone, Jacob Chikrin, Connor Timmins. I like those guys. They are not number one pair defensemen, though, just yet at this stage of their career. And Shane Gostisbehere has been a nightmare defensively for a few years. Very good puck mover, power play guy, can shoot the puck. But now he's being asked to play second pair minutes on the blue line for this Arizona team going into the year with Ilya Lyubushkin. And then you've got Strawman and Soderstrom on the third pair. I'm a little surprised Strawman went to Arizona. It's obviously a situation where, he's going to a team that's in complete rebuild, but nevertheless, he's probably the best, the sturdiest defender that they've got. But there's not a whole lot beyond that. And now you look at the goaltending. A couple years now of Darcy Kemper playing absolutely outstanding in net for them the last couple seasons. Was a big part in any success Arizona had. Making the playoffs 2 years ago, Darcy Kemper was a big part of that. Of course, he's now in Colorado, and you've got Carter Hutton and a very, very young, inexperienced, new to the NHL kind of backup here in Karel Vejmelka here for the Arizona Coyotes. So it ends up being a very, very they got goaltending that I don't trust because, look, Carter Hutton is what he is. He's had a tough few years. Now, he was with Buffalo, but look, Arizona is going to be much like Buffalo this year in that the roster's not very good. So that's why I don't think Carter Hutton's going to have a big amount of success. He needs a great team and a great blue line in front of him. He doesn't have that here in Arizona. So it's going to be tough times for the Arizona Coyotes this year. And making matters worse, they're in a central division where on paper, not only is every team, Alex, better than them, every team is significantly better than them on paper. So tough times for the Arizona Coyotes. And I feel bad for Andre Tourigny, a great head coach at the junior level. But again, does it translate to the pro level? Not only is that question out there, but now he's got to inherit what is a complete and utter rebuild going on with Arizona. So I just hope he gets to see the light at the end of the tunnel when they finally turn around and get better. I hope they give him time because obviously it's not going to be an overnight fix for them. Alex, what do you think of Arizona?
Yeah, they're going to be historically bad. Like I said, when the point totals came out, I jumped all over under 69, and then I hit it again under 67.5. I don't see where this team wins more than 25 games. And even looking at the losses, I don't see where they have a lot of games where they lose in overtime. I think they get blown out in a lot of games. It just seems to be just really bad. And the irony of, saying that their counterparts in the East are Columbus and Buffalo. Well, those are the first 2 games they have on their schedule. They play at Columbus and at Buffalo before coming home for 3 games. And then they go on a 6-game East Coast road trip against Florida, Tampa Bay, Washington, Carolina, Philly, and then back against Anaheim. So we're going to see just what this team is made of right away, and there's probably going to be some spots to fade them right out of the gate. And then at some point, we won't even be able to fade them on the money line. We'll have to be, same thing I said with Buffalo. We'll have to play the team total over for their opponent and maybe some first period overs as well. But I just don't see where this team is going to be able to compete and keep games close. It's gonna be ugly most nights for the Arizona Coyotes this year.
Yeah, they're really going to be challenged to score. They're going to be challenged to defend with this blue line, and the goaltending is going to be suspect. Like, it's just every area of the team is just in trouble, I think, going into this year you look at Arizona. Nashville Predators next up. This is probably a team that, I bashed on Nashville quite a bit last year, and I kind of feel the same way this year. I mean, they're going to have to show me, improvement before I'm ready to buy into this Nashville Predators team. You look at the roster on paper. I like Eli Tolvanen. I mean, he's a guy that legitimately gave them a spark, that young Finn. Now he's going to have another year in the league. He's a really solid year, 11 goals, 11 assists in 40 games last year. I think there's a guy to target if you're going to bet Nashville. Any players from them, like player props, shots on goal, goal scorer props, anything like that. I think that's a guy you might want to target because he showed you a lot of offensive upside, really good release as well with the puck. I liked his game last year. But other than that, Alex, you've got Ryan Johansson, Philip Forsberg. Look, the injuries are mounting for him. That's something you get a little bit worried about as well. He can't seem to stay healthy a little bit the last couple of years. He's had absences out of the lineup. Matt Duchene, you're relying on these same veterans that just consistently have not played well for Nashville the last couple of years. So that bothers me a little bit as well about them offensively. And then they're really going to be challenged in the third and the fourth line. Like, I don't see offensive punch really coming from the bottom 6 forwards, Cousins, Glass, Tomasino, Trennan, Sissons, and Olivier. is what we're looking at right now in the bottom 6. That's a little difficult to see where the goals are going to come from if they don't end up getting anything from the top 6 forward group consistently. The blue line, you've got your same old foot soldiers back there leading it. Roman Josi, Matthias Ekholm. Roman Josi's defensive game, it's worth noting, his defensive game has declined. He's still very good and moving the puck on the power play, can get that quarterback for you, and basically can be good with the man advantage, skate with the puck, make plays, still a good passer. But boy, his defensive game has dropped off a little bit, especially last year. So keep that in mind. They have Philippe Myers, they have Alexandre Carrier, Ekholm, Mark Borowiecki, and Dante Fabro on the blue line, which isn't a great blue line by Nashville standards. And you look at who they lost from last year, Victor Arvidsson will be missed. He's one of the guys that they could often count on for some offense. And when you look at what they brought in, not a whole lot in terms of free agents that they got, which were big splash, big time impactful free agents. And the goaltending, it's going to really hinge a lot on UC Saros, who is a guy that stole games from time to time and really played well at times and then played not so good at other times. And in fact, had some really rough games as well. They can't afford that this year with this patchwork lineup. So UC Saros is going to have a big year for the Nashville Predators in goal. And look, he's going to play a lot more games this year. With Pekka Rinne retiring, they bring in David Riddick to back him up. And that's not a backup goalie I trust, not one bit. After what we've seen the last couple of years, struggled in Calgary. Didn't really play all that well in Toronto. They gave him an opportunity when they traded for him, and he never played well or consistently for them. So now he's in Nashville. Definitely concerns about that goaltending duo, especially if Saros falters at all. And when you look at everybody else in the division, I just think there's teams in this division that are better than Nashville right now. So Nashville's a team that until I'm proven wrong, they're bet against material for me. Alex, what do you think here, Nashville?
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I think the window has officially closed on this team as far as being any kind of a contender. It's going to be interesting to see how Riddick and Saros tandem works. If they're just going to let Saros just run with it the same way they let Pekka Rinne during his prime just kind of run and play, 50, 60 games, or they're going to try and go with a 1A, 1B system. I think, Calle Jarnkrok going to Seattle, I think they're really going to miss him, especially in the penalty kill. There were times where he was, one of their better defensive forwards. And so now, like I said, there's just it's going to be a lot of holes on both ends of the ice, honestly. And I just see, they're going to be losing a lot of games. They'll be able to keep, a foot, and they'll play physical. They won't be getting crushed like Arizona, but they're still going to be finding themselves more in the loss column than wins.
Yeah, exactly. I think, we think of Nashville, the Laviolette days, the Barry Trotz days going way back, and defense was their fundamental. That's where they hung their hat. That is where they won games. And to think that Nashville last year, Alex, out of 31 NHL teams, was 28th in terms of goals allowed per game. That just shows you the drop-off that we've seen defensively in this team. The last, 5-on-5 defense, terrible for them last year. And of course, goaltending and any good defensive games they seem to play was because Saros played well above average in net. And they're going to need that again from him here this year. And they're going to be, I think, just as bad, if not worse defensively. And they might actually be worse offensively too, because look at that bottom 6 forward group. I mean, if you guys have access watching the show or listening to the podcast right now, you have access to looking at depth charts, and you can see on the bottom 6 forwards who's slotted in those spots right now on the 3rd and the 4th line for Nashville. You look at their past numbers offensively of all those players. Tell me who you trust to score and contribute offensively consistently for you. I don't trust anybody in that bottom 6 forward group. So it's definitely going to be a chore for this Nashville team going into the year. Probably going to be a tough season. And you've said it before, not a big fan of the coach either. And that continues to be an issue for me with this team as well. So could be a rough one here for Nashville. We go to the St. Louis Blues now next, which is a very interesting team here because the Blues have been that team that a couple of years ago, of course, won the Cup. We always think of them as a contender or an upper echelon team. I'm not sure what they are right now. That ends up being the big question for the Blues. They're sort of like caught in between. This is a team that definitely made a few changes in the offseason, and now we're going to have to see how it pans out here for this Blues team. But obviously, they say goodbye to some key players. Jaden Schwartz, although he was always injury riddled, but was a good player when he did play. Mike Hoffman, of course, now in Montreal. Sammy Blais, Vince Dunn gone. They did bring in, what I like, though, is they brought in Buchnevich. That's really going to boost this team offensively. He is an excellent offensive player. Has got, good creativity. He can move the puck. He skates well. He's got a good release as well. He's got a very good and complete, well-rounded offensive game, Pavel Buchnevich. And, the Rangers could afford to part with him, Alex, because they've got so much offense to begin with. But the Blues getting him, I think, is a very, very good move in the offseason, bringing him in, because this team could use a little bit more punch. Got that 4-year, $23 million deal. You look at what he did in just 54 games last year, 20 goals, 28 assists, and definitely could improve on those numbers now, because he's going to get a top 6 role here with the St. Louis Blues, and definitely be a counted on piece. Looks like they're going to line him up with Braden Shen and Costin here on this second line, so he's going to be able to make an impact. The Blues also add the veteran Brandon Saad in the offseason. Brandon Saad's still showing you he's capable at times. He's very streaky. He's not obviously what he was, say 5-6 years ago, but he still showed you at times he could contribute and chip in. We got O'Reilly Auto Parts still there, centering the number 1 line. When you look at the third line and the fourth line, I think there is capabilities, Alex, for some offense, unlike with Nashville's bottom 6. Barbashev, Robert Thomas, I think. Watch out for Robert Thomas. He could really be good this year. Third line center. He's kept getting better. He showed you some offense down the stretch. Jordan Kyrou on the third line. And we remember Kyrou had some really good stretches of contributing and scoring goals last year for St. Louis. And then you've got Bozak, even. He's going to play on the fourth line this year. And David Perron, who is a guy that scored 20 goals in the league before. And they're playing on the fourth line, both of these guys. So I actually think this is an improved offensive team. When I look at the defense, there I'm not so sure. I mean, Parayko's has had issues staying healthy and on the ice. Justin Falk didn't have the greatest of years last year. Torrey Krug, not exactly a consistent year start to finish last year, his first year with the Blues, getting him from Boston. So there are some issues there with that blue line a little bit. And not only is the blue line maybe declining a bit, but we've consistently seen Jordan Binnington, his numbers go down since he won the Stanley Cup. It's been a precipitous drop. Goals against, save percentage, all those advanced metrics, goals saved above average. And believe me, I'm going to be using those and incorporating those a lot more into my betting this year. And I started doing that last year as well. They all dropped. They all went down. So if the defense is going to decline a bit, if the goaltending is going to be shaky, and Ville Husso's not NHL caliber yet. Nothing I have seen from him with the Blues when he started last year indicated he's ready for the NHL. I think this could be a team with devalued totals, because we think of the Blues for years as trouble scoring, good defensively, good goaltending. They might be an over team this year. They might be in some more high-scoring games. That's more than anything what I'm looking to do with St. Louis. Maybe bet some of their games over the total. And because, if they can score more, they got a chance to win more games. But if they don't, I don't know if the defense and goaltending is as good. It's going to be imperative that their offense takes that improved step that I think it will. And that Buchnevich in particular is the impact offensive difference maker that I think he could be for this Blues team. Alex, what do you think here, St. Louis?
Yeah, we saw the shades of them being an over team last year, like I said, with the streakiness of Binnington, and they had, like I said, a ton of offense. The offense was, like I said, everything's kind of streaky with this Blues team. If you really think about it, like I said, they'll have games where they'll get 5 or 6 goals, a couple of nights, and all of a sudden they play, 3-1 and they lose, or 4-2 and they lose. But like I said, the defense, if they can't stay healthy, that's really going to be the key of them as far as being able to win games. Like I said, they're gonna get their goals, they're gonna give up goals, but the defensive play is what's going to determine how many games they actually end up winning and how many games they end up losing. But like I said, I'll be looking to play them first period overs, full game overs for the most part. Like I said, because Buchnevich definitely adds a punch to that offense. Did a little more stability as well with that offense.
Yeah, they were a heavy under team 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Last year, they still cashed more unders than overs, but only 28 unders, 26 overs, in the regular season last year for the St. Louis Blues. So we definitely saw them trend more toward being a 500 team totals-wise, almost as many overs as unders. And I think now this year, it actually could swing that pendulum even more. And you could see, I think, this team in a few more high-scoring games to the point where you might see more overs than unders this year with the St. Louis Blues. All right, we move on down the list here, and we've come to the team that Alex loves with all his heart, the Chicago Blackhawks, and the excitement that this franchise certainly pumped into the fan base in the offseason with the moves they've made. It should be a fascinating season. And what's great about a team like Chicago is that there's all kinds of differing opinions on a team like this, a team that really has had a tough time the last couple of years, that was sort of looking like they were trending downward on the verge of a complete rebuild. And then all of a sudden now we've got reason to believe this rebuild they hit the pause button, if you will, on this rebuild with the incredible offseason activity really we saw from the Chicago Blackhawks. And it's to the point now where even Chicago, or Alex, I should say, has had to ease up on the vitriol on his great buddy there, Stanley Bowman, with the Chicago Blackhawks because of everything that happened in the offseason. Look, definitely there are pieces, no doubt. It's sad to say goodbye to Duncan Keith. Obviously, there's no question. Of course, a lot of their other departures were minor. Pius Suter, Adam Boquist. But the big news is obviously what they brought in. They brought in Seth Jones, a complete and utter difference maker in terms of that blue line. We've been waiting for Chicago to have that bona fide, electrifying defenseman. Can Seth Jones get back to that level is the question, because, look, he was injured last year. He had some up and down play. But I think, a new scenery, playing with this, storied franchise, and being with the players on this team that are there. You're talking playing with Patrick Kane. You're talking about playing with a returning captain, Jonathan Toews. How great is it going to be to see him back this season on the ice for the Chicago Blackhawks? They dearly missed him, what he can do. And it's not just scoring, it's leadership. It's in the dressing room. It's winning faceoffs. It's being a great two-way forward, which he's always been throughout his career. It's doing all of those little things for you. That's what they missed without Jonathan Toews last year, the Chicago Blackhawks. Of course, Patrick Kane, Alex DeBrincat, who I think is going to have an outstanding year. I mean, we're already looking at maybe him, Tyler Johnson, Patrick Kane, looking at that as a potential top line. That would be unbelievable. Toews, Kubalik, we've seen him, what he can do offensively. Philip Kurashev, Kirby Dach for a full season, which you hope to have for Chicago. I mean, you've got all three lines there, and you've got Dylan Strome potentially starting the year on a fourth line for this Blackhawks team. And Dylan Strome really, I thought, played well, and maybe his best season ever for the Blackhawks last year, or in his career when he was with Chicago last year, playing with Ryan Carpenter, playing with a guy that gives you a little sandpaper as well on that line. They get him from Edmonton, Jujhar Khaira, from Edmonton, and now he's with Chicago. All of a sudden, second line could be dynamic, really dynamic and explosive. The third line's got some ability to score and produce for you. And even like with Strome on the fourth line, I wouldn't put it past them to chip in offensively as well. The blue line, we know that's been the issue, right? For years, just couldn't defend. The blue line's been just terrible for the last couple of years for Chicago, but it's definitely improved. We talked about Seth Jones and the bringing him in. Jake McCabe. Don't sleep on Jake McCabe going into this season, because, look, he played in Buffalo. Sabres were lousy. But if there was one guy that could defend at an above-average level in his own zone, be in good position, knock someone down in front of the net, Jake McCabe was that one guy on defense for the Buffalo Sabres. And I think defensively, he is going to make Chicago better. I do think he's very good in his own zone. I know he's just a product of a horrible, horrible Buffalo Sabres team. I think that was a great flying way under the radar, because all the big headline acquisitions or additions in the offseason for Chicago were Tyler Johnson, Seth Jones, of course, Marc-Andre Fleury, who we'll get to in just a second. Not as many people talked about Jake McCabe. And, Jake McCabe is going to, I think, with a lot of these guys that leave Buffalo, he's going to get a fresh start, clean slate, change of scenery, a chance to totally revitalize and restart and refuel his game. And I think you're going to see that here for him with the Chicago Blackhawks. Riley Stillman, Connor Murphy, I think, has got some upside and can keep improving. Calvin DeHaan, he's had injury issues. He's a good defender in terms of being a stay-at-home shutdown presence as well. So I think Chicago is going to have a better ability to keep the puck out of their own net. The blue line was definitely improved for this team in the offseason with what they brought in. And of course, now you've got Marc-Andre Fleury, who of course showed you last year what he's capable of. He can still play at a very, very high level. Now, the Chicago defense, while improved, is not quite as, rock steady as Vegas. So we'll see. Can Marc-Andre Fleury keep playing at a high level with a defense that, while improved, may not be quite as good as that Golden Knights blue line last year? That remains to be seen. But boy, if he's anything close to what we saw last year, and he's certainly going to be motivated. That's the thing that I like about Fleury. He didn't like the way he got bounced out of Vegas. Very, very disingenuous in my mind, the way that whole thing ended. And he is going to be absolutely chomping at the bit to show everybody I can still play. Vegas is going to regret it that they parted ways with me. And I think there's a real motivation that's off the charts. Marc-Andre Fleury, if he's not motivated to still show you he can play at a high level, he wouldn't have said, I'm coming to play this year for Chicago. He would have retired because he was thinking about that long and hard after he got bounced by Vegas. But he said, no, I'm coming back. I'm going to make this work. I'm excited. And I think he wants to prove people that he's going to be incredible this year and show everybody what he's capable of and stick it to the Golden Knights, if you will. So I'm buying into Chicago a little bit cautiously, because we're still talking about, can all the pieces fit? We mentioned Tyler Johnson. I haven't mentioned him fully yet, but look, Stanley Cup champion, all the experience he has, an offensive force to be sure. Now, look, his offense diminished last year, but again, he's lost in the shuffle on a team like Tampa Bay. I think he's still a very good offensive player, and he'll make a difference contributing for this Chicago team. So I like the look of this team. They're going to score goals in bunches. I really believe that. The defense looks improved. And of course, now they've got Marc-Andre Fleury coming off an outstanding year and motivated, I think, to prove the doubters and specifically his former team wrong. So I'm excited to see how this team plays. And at least to begin the year, they're a bet on team for me because I think I like what they've done here. Alex, what do you think? Got to be a lot of excitement for you with these Blackhawks.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, this is kind of the final push for this core group. You talk about Taves and Kane. They're getting a bit older. Kane seems like he might be able to play a few more years past this, but with Taves obviously missing last year due to health issues and so forth, you wonder if he can win one more. He might possibly hang it up. Same thing with Marc-Andre Fleury. He had a total out. To just go on and say I'm going to retire because I wanted to stay in Vegas and they got rid of me. But no, like I said, he seems to be motivated and focused and ready to keep playing and at least give it his all for another season. So I just love everything that they've done right now. Like I said, Tyler Johnson was a great pickup as well. Not to mention moving Brent Seabrook's dead contract, so they're able to get rid of that, get rid of Keith's contract, get Seth Jones signed long term. So not only are they still looking to contend right now, but they have things in motion for the future. Seth Jones, Alex DeBrincat, Kirby Dach, that's the future, and they're playing and could contribute right now as well. So everything is pointing up. I'm already on the Hawks in opening night. I got them at plus. I actually got them at plus 256 way back in August when the lines opened against Colorado. It's now dropped to 230. Some places all the way down to plus 200. So I, tell you guys to grab that sooner than later. I also have a ticket on them to win the Stanley Cup at 50-1. I just don't think that price is going to be around if they start winning right away, because we know the Hawks draw a lot of money as a public team. That could easily turn into 30-1 with a hot winning streak, if not 20-1 or better. So I was able to grab that, and I can kind of maneuver with it if the Hawks do make the postseason. I'm in a good position to at least lock in some kind of profit. But I do think we see the Hawks find a way to get to the playoffs once again with the score.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be fascinating. It's just amazing how in like a span of 8 months or so, things have completely flipped in terms of the direction of this franchise. I mean, to the point where it looked like we were about to start a long rebuild, and now we're thinking playoffs and maybe making a run if we make the playoffs. So this is going to be one of the teams that I'm most fascinated to watch throughout the course of the season. No question. Let's go to Terry Edelman's Minnesota Wild. And by the way, we thank everybody in the chat for joining us live here. We've got Terry Edelman, Let's Go Wild Picks, Earl Sports Bets, Cheshire Cat, How We Feeling, Nate Dogg 420. We welcome in everybody, J Stone 9. Thanks to Melissa Cunningham, Brian Watson, Pie Guy, Oz B. We appreciate everybody joining us here for live on YouTube. And of course, we thank those of you listening to the podcast version of this Western Conference preview show as well. All right, Minnesota Wild, of course, a resurgent year, really a year for the Minnesota Wild where we can say we're now a fun team to watch. And that's the biggest, takeaway for me from last year. They became a fun team to watch play with, with Dean Evison. He lets them attack. He lets them, make plays with the puck, go up and down the ice way more than we've seen out of Mike Yeo and going all the way back to the Jacques Lemaire days, obviously. I mean, they just had a bunch of coaches where even with Boudreau there for a bit, it didn't exactly go up and down the ice and, show off their offensive skill set, show off their speed the way they have the last couple of years. And for the Minnesota Wild, obviously there was a lot of talk about, were they going to be able to get the contract done with Kirill, the Thrill Kaprizov, and they were able to do that. Of course, they part ways with Ryan Suter. Had to be done. It's sad to see the season be such a struggle for him with Minnesota last year, but that's what happens when Father Time knocks on your door. He's unforgiving. And that's exactly what's happened to Ryan Suter the last year or two. They say goodbye to Nick Bonino, Ian Cole gone. But, when you look at the additions, I like Alex Goligoski brought in. Dmitry Kulikov's a veteran defenseman. It's more than capable. John Merrill, most of their additions coming on the back end to solidify the blue line because of you losing a guy like Suter. So you need other people to step up, eat up the minutes. I don't mind the blue line. Brodin, Dumba, Goligoski, Spurgeon, Kulikov, and John Merrill. And John Merrill got some playoff time last year with the Minnesota Wild. And, of course, up front, Parise, they say goodbye to him as well, moving on from him. And, look, Parise and Suter have been stalwarts for the Minnesota Wild for the last decade or so, or going on a decade. And, it's going to be different seeing, this team take the ice without those two guys. But I think they're a better team for it. It's got to be said. I hate to say that, but, it's true. They're a better team for it. Kaprizov, Eriksson Ek had a nice year last year. Matt Zuccarello can still play very well. If, again, stay healthy for an 82-game season is the question mark. But look, breakout year for Eriksson Ek, 19 goals, 11 assists, career bests for him, which is a good sign. You got Marcus Foligno, Hartman, and Greenway back again. Let's see if Kevin Fiala, can keep up the kind of year he had last year. So it's definitely, he's been a consistent 20-goal guy in the league. We'll see if that carries over to this year. They've got some players in the pipeline as well. Marco Rossi, it's going to be interesting to see how much they think of him and how quickly he might be able to get into the lineup at some point. And then, of course, in goal, same two goalies as last year, Cam Talbot, Capo Kakkonen. It's going to be interesting to see if these guys can continue to play well. Talbot had some really great stretches last year for the Minnesota Wild. And look, he played well in the playoffs that one year for Calgary as well. But Minnesota is one of those teams that I don't know if they're going to make a leaps and bounds jump, in terms of last year. I don't know if that's going to be true because when you look at the division, you're still going to have to contend with Colorado. You're still going to have to contend with St. Louis. You're still going to have Chicago's going to be better this year. So where does that leave Minnesota? It's going to force Minnesota to have to be as good, if not better, than they were last year. I think we'll get to Winnipeg in a second. I think they're really going to improve this year, that Jets team. So where does that leave Minnesota? I think they're a good team. They're a competitive team. But for me, it's not really a strong bet on or bet against because I think they're going to stay right at or near where they were last year with a chance for slight improvement. The problem is there's going to be a lot of other teams that are going to be as good or will improve as well here in the Central. So I don't know if that makes their ceiling as high as it should be, even though I do think on paper they do look like a little bit of an improved team and an improved roster. Alex, what's your thoughts here? Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, like I said, this is a fun team to watch. They're a competitive team. They don't give up. You see the last two nights they've had back-to-back overtime wins where they had to come back. They were down 3-0 against the Blues. End up having blown a 2-1 lead against the Hawks, and both times they end up getting the win. The culture has changed with the Minnesota Wild, and that's all due to Dean Evison, head coach, and Bill Guerin, their GM. They're emphasizing that play hard every shift, every minute, and give it your all. And it's coming out now where to the point of, they're not rebuilding anymore. They are contenders. And because of how they got rid of Suter and Parise's deals, their contracts, and now with the new deal with Kaprizov, they really have a window of maybe 2-3 years tops before they run into some serious salary cap trouble. They got to start winning right now. So, like I said, they got to prove to everybody that it wasn't a fluke because they were in that realigned Western Division last year. So they got the feast on San Jose and Anaheim and Phoenix. Like I said, can they hang around? We know they play tough with Colorado. They play tough with the Hawks, like you said. But now with Dallas, looking to bounce back, like I said, Winnipeg and St. Louis, they still always have a punch of chance. So they gotta prove their weight. And it's going to be interesting to see. I think they're going to be a fun team to watch once again. I think there's going to be a lot of chances to bet on them and a lot of overs as well, especially if the goaltending doesn't hold up just as much as it did before. I mean, Cam Talbot, like I said, getting a bit older. He had some great stretches last year, but we know he can regress, a little bit, and that might be some kind of trouble. But Kakkonen also going into his second year, if he can avoid the sophomore slump, then maybe they can stay afloat. I think they're a playoff team. I think they find a way to sneak in with the wild card. But there'll definitely be some betting opportunities with sides and totals on the Wild this year.
All right, Dallas Stars next up in this Central Division. Can't say I'm enamored with this team. Like, you can't have every team improve. I think Chicago's improved. I think Minnesota's going to be as good, if not better, than last year. Colorado ain't going anywhere. So you got to have someone other than Arizona, really take a fall. This could be the team that takes that fall. The Dallas Stars. I mean, I don't love the team on paper when you look at it. Tyler Seguin, can we trust him to be on the ice for a full year? I don't know. And he's a streaky player. He's had some great, offensive streaks, goal scoring streaks, point streaks, and then you can't see him for 10, 15 games, doesn't do anything for you. That's an issue. Jamie Benn's kind of the same way, actually even more than Seguin in that category. I mean, he could go through some wicked slumps and then just all of a sudden catch fire offensively. These are guys now that are, progressing now to the latter stages, too, of their career, the back half of their career. Pavelski, clearly the same thing as well. Hinson, I like Jason Robertson. Clearly, we saw his talent on display last year. The bottom six forward group, they bring in Michael Raffl in the offseason, bring him in from the Philadelphia Flyers. Yoni Hakanpää on the blue line comes in as well, Anaheim, and then he was with Carolina. And they also have Ryan Suter is a head scratcher. And I know Jimmy Murphy, Alex, was with us when we mentioned it. I have no clue, not zero, why the Dallas Stars thought it was imperative to sign Ryan Suter and get him in the offseason. That was baffling to me. He doesn't make your blue line better. I hate to say this. He's had a terrific career, outstanding. But at this stage of his career, the guy does not make your blue line better. He does not. And I was surprised that Dallas went in that direction. Their blue line is their strength. I mean, I don't like that Suter's there now. I don't at all. But Heiskanen, Lindell, Klingberg, that trio is excellent. And they're going to have to be once again. And then you look at the goaltending, though. To me, it's not NHL bona fide, outstanding, top-tier goaltending across the board with any of the goalies they have coming into the year. I don't know how good Jake Ottinger is. The sample size is just too small right now. It's been good in spurts, but he hasn't put it together for a long period of time. Anton Udobin is now Mr. Old Man Winter on this team from a goaltending standpoint. We didn't see him play as well last year, and injuries crept up. And they bring in Braden Holtby, a guy that's just he's had his worst years the last couple. The last year or two in Washington didn't go so well for him. Vancouver last year, not very good when put into the when starting games last year for the Canucks. So the goaltending bothers me for Dallas. It's got to be said, Alex, in a tough division like the Central, where I think so many teams are as good as they were last year or better than they were last year. I don't see that same type of ceiling for the Dallas Stars. So for me, they're a bet against squad. Alex, what are your thoughts on Dallas?
Yeah, I agree. There's nothing that really sticks out with the Stars team. Like I said, I don't understand why they went and got Holtby. I guess we still don't know what the deal is going to be with Ben Bishop. He's still around, but is he going to be fully healthy? Is he it just seemed like his career might be done, to be honest. But like I said, to add Holtby to that mix of is Ottinger ready? You're taking time away from him. Khudobin, like you said, getting a bit long in the tooth. Do you move him somewhere or do something? They just created a bit of a mess there in net. And like you said, some of the forwards and defensive signings, like I said, Ryan Suter, I don't quite get why they had. And he's a top line. He's gonna be the top line too, according to Cap Friendly, looking at the depth chart with Klingberg. I don't think he's got enough to be a top line defenseman. One thing, if you needed some depth, if you had injury issues or something, you brought him in. But to have him, for a full year, you expect him to contribute at 36 when we've seen a steep decline in his game. I just don't see what value they offer. It's going to be interesting to see if teams, if the books rather, are high on Dallas early, and then we'll be able to fade them, get some decent prices. I don't know. The jury remains to be out with them, but like you said, somebody's got to be trending downward, and it seems like the Dallas Stars might be that team that's on the outside looking in the playoff picture.
Yeah, it seems that way to me. And I think this could be a sneaky over the total team in their games as well. I think they'll score a little bit more with what they've got up front, especially if Pavelski, Sagan, Ben stay healthy. And then they've got, of course, Robertson, who came on like a gangbusters last year. Radulov, if he's healthy. Like, they got offense, definitely. But Suter, that's going to make the blue line worse. And let's not forget who they lost on the blue line last in terms of departures. Pysyk. Jamie Oleksiak is a huge loss. Jamie Oleksiak's a great, great defenseman in terms of just blocking shots, defending the front of the net, being in good position. That's a loss to the blue line for Dallas. They're probably weaker defensively in terms of defending other teams without Oleksiak this year. So to me, this is definitely a team that I think could score and maybe give up more goals. And certainly their goaltending questionable on paper. So definitely could see some overs with Dallas this year. Last year, Dallas, terms of totals, in fact, last year, believe it or not, they were 27 overs, 20 unders, which is kind of surprising. They still had more overs than unders last year. You could see more of that this year as well. All right, the Winnipeg Jets next up. This is the team that I took. Like, I would lean Chicago to win the Central. I don't mind that bet at that price. I don't mind even Minnesota. I think Colorado's clearly the favorite and probably deserve to be the favorite to win the Central. But if I'm going to take a shot with teams other than Colorado, Minnesota's a consideration, Chicago's a consideration, but my number one consideration as a futures bet to win the Central other than Colorado is Winnipeg. I really like what the Jets did. You can get the Jets 13-1 in that range, 16-1 as well in some spots to win the Central. They addressed what they had to address, Alex, in the offseason, the blue line. Blue line has been their detriment. It's just not been – they've had to rely on a lot of guys like Tucker Poolman and so many defensemen in roles that they're not really comfortable or equipped to handle just yet. And now Winnipeg addressed the blue line, and props to Kevin Cheveldayoff, the GM, for doing that. He knew the blue line was a weakness, a clear issue on this team, and he brought in Nate Schmidt and he brought in Brendan Dillon. Two terrific additions to this Winnipeg Jets blue line. Guys that have experience, guys that have played in the playoffs before. Outstanding GM work by Kevin Cheveldayoff, bringing in Brendan Dillon, bringing in Nate Schmidt. And now you go with Dylan DeMello, who went healthy, who's been very good going back to when they got him from Ottawa. Neil Pionk has taken a huge step forward. He was actually one of the best Jets defensemen last year, I thought. Neil Pionk started with the Rangers, and last year with the Jets was very good. Josh Morrissey, probably be more comfortable because he's not going to have to play as many minutes with Dillon and Schmidt now on the blue line. They're very high on the young kid, Ville Heinola, who they think might see some time on this blue line as well during the course of the season. Up front, they're still going to have offensive capabilities. Kyle Connor, Paul Stastny, Blake Wheeler, Nikolai Ehlers, a tremendous season for him last year. And I think Pierre-Luc Dubois will have a bounce back year. Think about the situation. He gets to Columbus or gets to Winnipeg from Columbus. He has to quarantine for so long. He has to all of a sudden be thrust into a team where he's trying to find a role, trying to fit in, a team that was already pretty deep up front. I think now with a full training camp, he's going to be established in Winnipeg. He's going to get comfortable in his surroundings, being in that town. And now he's going to be a lot more comfortable in this team. And I think he'll be a lot better. He'll be your value guy for player props and points and shots on goal, all of that. He's too talented for me to be as poor as he was down the stretch for the Winnipeg Jets in the regular season and playoffs last year. So I think Pierre-Luc Dubois, PLD, as they call him, the local Jets media calls him that, PLD. I'm like, what the fuck are they? Oh, yeah, Pierre-Luc Dubois. That is. But that's what they call him. And I think he'll play a lot better. Watch out for Jansen Harkins, too. I think he's going to get more playing time. He's got a lot of offensive upside. He's probably going to play on the third line with Adam Lowry and Christian Vesalainen, who they have some high hopes for as well. And then they bring in Riley Nash, a nice fourth liner, give you some grit, good forechecker, all of that. So, and then, of course, you've still got one of the premier goalies in the NHL, in my opinion, Connor Hellebuck. And there's nothing wrong with them in goal, obviously, with him. So, yeah, bet on, buy sign all the way for me with the Winnipeg Jets. And I took them at that 12 to 16-1 price range to win the Central as well. Alex, your thoughts on the Winnipeg Jets?
Yeah, I mean, they seem to be a solid, sturdy team. Like you said, Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to be the X factor. If he can really get his game back to a tip-top level and really, chime in offensively, that's going to pay dividends for this Jets team. But obviously, it starts with Connor Hellebuck. And you wonder, he's played so many minutes. You wonder if he, gets bogged down a bit. They don't have Laurent Brossoit anymore, who was, turned into one of the best backups in the league. They have to go with Eric Comrie. We'll see if he's ready to kind of, handle that 20, 25 game workload because, like I said, Hellebuck, you don't want to just ride him into the ground, especially if you're going to be, a playoff contender, especially with all these tough teams that we talked about in this division. So I'm not as high on this team as you are. I think they're going to be a competitive team. They're going to be a team worth betting on. But I think they will still probably find their way probably more so outside of the range. I think Chicago is better. I think St. Louis is better. And so they'll just kind of fade out late. And like I said, it all depends on Hellebuck. If Hellebuck, can't, stand on his head or if he were to get injured, they would be in some serious trouble.
Yeah, it's definitely Hellebuck. It's imperative because you're right. You don't have that stabilizer to back him up. And Brossoit played very well for them last year. So now you got to turn to Eric Comrie, a little more of an unknown back there. And I think they want to at least try to get Comrie in there a bit, to preserve the energy and the stamina of Hellebuck come playoff time. So interesting how Paul Maurice plays it with the goaltending this year. All right, final team for the Central Division, Colorado Avalanche, obviously. Minus 260 to win the division. There's no way I'm laying that price with them. They obviously are very capable of winning the division here. I don't doubt that for a second. But you look at this team, they're going to be loaded for bear offensively with Landeskog, McKinnon, Rantanen, Comfer, Kadri, Burakovsky, Alex Newhook. Watch out for him. He has the chance to be an impact player very quickly offensively for this Colorado team, even though he's only 20 years old. Tyson Jost, Nichushkin, Maltsev. Bring in Darren Helm. I like that addition. Darren Helms have been around a long time with Detroit. Obviously, he's been there for a lot of bad years, but he was also on Detroit going all the way back, I believe, to when they won one of their cups way back when with Babcock. And that was like a long, long time ago. So Darren Helm's been around a very long time, and I think could help that Colorado team a little bit, that fourth line center spot, give them, good forechecking type of role. The blue line's interesting because, unfortunately for them, they were victimized losing a guy like Graves, of course, who is gone from that blue line. There's a couple other key pieces gone. Of course, up front, they lose Jonas Donskoy, Patrick Nemeth gone. And the shocking one, not is Philip Grubauer. I'm very surprised, that somehow, some way they didn't come to an agreement with Philip Grubauer. And it kind of led to Colorado scrambling because, wait a minute, we don't have Grubauer. We got to get a number one guy. But they addressed it probably as well as they could. I mean, I like Darcy Kemper. It's probably as good a move as they could have possibly made at the time in terms of trying to fill that number one goaltending role. But here's the problem. Pavel Francouz is on IR, and you've got only Jonas Johansson behind him. And we've seen enough of Jonas Johansson to know that's not a guy to trust right now. So to me, there's question marks. What happens if anything happens to Grubauer from an injury standpoint? But I've seen enough now, Alex, out of Grubauer that I think this guy, and because of the fact that I think there could be a couple more questions on their blue line now this year coming into the year, because a lot of their defensemen, Girard, Makar, Bo Byram, Ryan Murray even, a lot of and Devon Taves, by the way, is going to be missing the regular season. He's going to miss quite a bit of time, off-season surgery. He's going to have to recover from that. This is going to be a blue line that's more known for their puck moving and their skating. Not so much their defending. So there's going to be a big onus on Darcy Kemper, to have to play well here for the Colorado Avalanche in net this season. So they could be in some higher scoring, especially early, till they get Devon Taves back. Devon Taves is one of their best shutdown defensemen. And without him, they could have to win a few more 6-5, 5-4 games. And I'd be hesitant to lay big numbers with Colorado this year. For as amazing as they were last year and their metrics were off the charts good, can they duplicate it again this year is a big question. Alex, your thoughts on the Avalanche?
Yeah, obviously, like I said, they're the big favorites to win the division, the conference, and Stanley Cup. And it makes sense because you look at how loaded their offense is. But like I said, the question marks of, health on the blue line and health in net. Like I said, Francouz is out and he's on IR. But, Kemper is a guy who's, we've seen him, time and time again when he was in Arizona get hurt. He, struggled to stay healthy. So, That's the thing. You wanted to try to, get the question mark, answered. Can you get a number one goalie that's stable? They still don't really have that. That still remains to be seen. So, like you said, they're going to be heavily favored. I'm already fading them night one when they play Chicago. There's definitely going to be some bet against spots for the Colorado Avalanche with these high lines that they're going to be favored by. So that's something I'll be looking at. But overall, they're going to find a way to definitely win some games. They're going to compete, and they're going to be at the top, if not win this division. That shouldn't be an issue. But I don't know if they have the horses it takes to make it out of. They haven't been past the second round in ages, whatever they've been in the postseason. So I don't know if they're going to be cup contender. They seem to be kind of just the same old Colorado Avalanche that we saw from the years past.
And they're sort of in that same boat as Toronto a little bit and some other teams where they got to show it in the playoffs more than they have. I mean, this is now a couple at least they've won a first round, unlike Toronto, but that's a couple second round exits they've had now, under this McKinnon, Landeskog, Rantanen, Corn. There was some talk that they might not bring Landeskog, their captain back, but they ended up doing that. So there's some proving ground for the Colorado Avalanche this year for sure. All right, let's turn before we wrap up the Central, I will say there's two make the playoff bets I've made, Chicago and Winnipeg in this division. I'm on Winnipeg at minus 140, make the playoffs, and Chicago's around even money, minus 115 to make the playoffs. Those are the two miss the playoffs bets that I made. I haven't bet any miss the playoffs, but I'm in terms of yet. But I was looking at Dallas, but I'm going to wait and see on that. I'm tempted though by the no on Dallas plus 185 for sure to miss the playoffs for them. So that's where I'm kind of looking. I haven't bet Dallas yet, but I might add it, and I do like Chicago and Winnipeg to make the playoffs in the Central division. All right, let's go to the Pacific Division. Alex, we're going to clump these three teams together, talking about them all at once here. And I'm talking about the three teams that probably are going to battle for the basement: Anaheim, San Jose, Los Angeles here in this division. It's odd, I didn't mention Seattle, and I'll get to Seattle in a minute. I'm not saying Las Vegas or Vegas Golden Knights type of success in year one. Clearly, I don't think that's going to happen. But I think that team's going to be so freaking tough and a tough out every night. We'll get to them in a sec. I actually think San Jose, LA, Anaheim, they're all behind Seattle in this division. When you look at those three teams, I mean, for San Jose, they actually should be better addition by subtraction. At least Martin Jones is gone, and he's not going to start the majority of your games this year. You got to look at that, as a positive if you're San Jose. But is your goaltending still vastly upgraded with James Reimer and Aiden Hill? I wouldn't say that's the case by any stretch of the imagination. You look at up front, Evander Kane's situation is hanging over this team like a dark cloud. If it's not one thing, it's another. If it's not gambling allegations, it's fucking fake vaccine cards, vaccination cards. It's just one freaking mess after another with Evander Kane. And if you believe the reports, the players want him out. They want the distractions. They want the black cloud out of there, out of the dressing room, out of the team. And we'll see if that gets cleared up. The problem is, Alex, Evander Kane, for his screw-ups and his issues off the ice, he's probably the best guy they've got offensively. And now if you don't have him playing for you, where are the goals going to come from? I mean, Logan Couture slowed down his production the last couple of years. I mean, you got Kevin LeBanc, Hurdle's constantly hurt and out of the lineup, Timo Meier, and then you go down the third and the fourth line. You can't count on anybody there to be a consistent offensive weapon for you. The defense, Burns is on the downward trajectory. Carlson is just a disaster still in his own end, even though he's still got that creativity offensively and on the power play. For Mario Ferraro, Radim Simek, Mark-Edouard Vlasic, who has been a very good, sturdy, stay-at-home shutdown defenseman, but now has a lot of years under his belt, and even we saw him get beaten a few times. Defensive miscues you don't usually see from him. So just a team that I think offensively, they're not going to score enough. They're still going to give up a lot. And to me, they're a team that's definitely going to struggle. San Jose, Anaheim's going to be awful, I think. I'm sorry, I hate to say that, but Gibson's going to have to steal so many games for them. Other than the top line of Maxime Comtois, Trevor Zegras, and Troy Terry, Henrique Getzlaff and Raquel, they're supposed to be guys that can score, but they didn't do it consistently enough last year for them. Can they bounce? They're going to have to bounce back this year. And the third and the fourth line, you're going to get Precious Little. I'm not shocked, but Jakob Silfverberg's a guy that's been a good offensive player in the past, and his game's just deteriorated for the Anaheim Ducks the last year or two. The blue line is still pretty reasonable. Watch out for Jamie Drysdale. They like him a lot. He's going to get immediate ability to be on this roster in a top 4 role. Kevin Shattenkirk brought in, but he doesn't really move the needle for me. And of course, Lindholm, Fowler, and Manson still from last year on the blue line. A lot's going to fall on Anaheim. I think the one team of this trio, Alex, that's got a little upside, it's LA. It's the Los Angeles Kings. And I'm not saying yet they're a playoff team. They're in a tough conference overall, pretty competitive Pacific Division. But Iafallo was great last year. Kopitar still got some gas in the tank. I like the addition of Victor Arvidsson from the Nashville Predators. Philip Danault, great addition. Defensively going to help this team. I mean, obviously, he got ripped for his offensive ineptitude, but defensively, he's as good as it gets as a defensive forward. We saw what he did shutting down Matthews and Marner, shutting down the Jets, shutting down key Vegas players last year in the playoffs for Montreal. It's a nice addition there. Bottom 6 forward, Athanasiou is a wild card. He can look great. He can be non-existent. Trevor Moore showed me something a little bit last year. Velarde, Wagner, Lemieux, a solid 4th line. You look at the blue line, I still worry about it. Doughty's getting older. Edler, can't stay healthy, and he's an older defenseman now. Sean Walker's solid. Matt Roy's solid, but they still struggled at times to defend, gave up chances last year. And Cal Peterson's got to show that he can continue to get better. I do think they're still going to give up some goals, but they're going to score more this year, maybe an over team. But I still think there's most of upside of these bottom dwellers, Alex, in the Pacific Division out of Anaheim, San Jose, and LA. It's LA that I think's got the biggest upside to maybe be a bet-on team, be a profitable team, and maybe surprise a few people. Alex, your take on these 3 teams here, the California teams, if you will, San Jose, Anaheim, LA.
Yeah, like you said, LA is definitely the team that where there'll be some spots worth betting on with this team. Obviously, the Quentin Byfield injury, that's unfortunate. Obviously, he's a talent that you definitely would want to see, get as much time as possible and help, with the process of rebuilding. They're going to be the better team of the 3 for quite some time. I think that, their ceiling is quite high. But like I said, they're still going to go through some growing pains where, Anaheim, I mean, how long does John Gibson stay in Anaheim? I think at some point he might get moved at the deadline and they can get a bunch of assets back and, really get this whole rebuild started. But it's going to be, pretty ugly. And San Jose, like you said, there's no offense without Evander Kane, unfortunately. So, if they can't get any goals, and we know how the defense is, that goaltending, like you said, it's still shaky. Those are the 2 teams that, like I said, fade them as early as you can because they're probably going to get priced out to the point where they're going to be, plus 250, 300 underdogs, every other night.
Yeah, no question. Definitely, I think that's what we're looking at. San Jose, it'll be rough, I think. Anaheim, for sure, I think it's going to be a tough year, unless Gibson steals some, which he could, but that's asking a lot. And then, of course, you've got Los Angeles, who I think of all the teams, I think that and there's a lot in the prospect pipeline right now for the Kings as well. They've replenished that quite well. Unfortunate setback, you're right, with Quentin Byfield, Alex. I was looking forward to seeing him play this year for the Kings, and he's going to be out indefinitely. Tough blow for the Los Angeles Kings to deal with that. All right, let's go to the Seattle Kraken next up, the expansion team, year 1. Look, this team, I think, is going to be very difficult, very stingy, very feisty, and very competitive. Now, how many games they're going to win is going to be the big question, but they're positioned to be better than some people think, and here's why with them. They've got a foundation in terms of their defense and their goaltending that they're going to be able to rely on. They've actually got a very good blue line, and I'm shocked they built a blue line as good as they were able to already. Vince Dunn from the Blues is a great addition. He's good, very good. Adam Larson had a resurgent year last year for the Edmonton Oilers, and they're going to miss him. He's now with this Seattle team. Giordano, obviously not what he was in his prime, but he's still a plus defenseman. Leadership, obviously, for this team. He's been a captain with the Flames all these years. That's going to help the dressing room element for Seattle. Jamie Oleksiak was another great addition. Dallas, he's a very good stay-at-home defenseman. Soucy and Will Borgen are good. They've got some depth there with Jeremy Lauzon and Hayden Fleury as well. That is a blue line that's going to be tough to score against. I'm serious. That is a blue line that you're going to have to work to get goals against, get inside position against, get open ice against, because they're all plus defenders for the most part. And that's going to help them out. We talked about them getting Philip Grubauer. A lot of us didn't see that happening. Seattle landing Grubauer, but they did. And now with him and Chris Drieger, that ends up forming a very solid 1-2 punch in net. And in fact, Vezina Trophy, because I think he's going to have a good defense too in front of him, which means maybe he's not worthy of this award if you think about it, if he's going to have a good blue line in front of him. But I'll say this right now, you could do a lot worse than taking Philip Grubauer 12-1 for the Vezina, to be honest with you, because he played at a Vezina caliber level last year with Colorado. I've seen enough of Grubauer to know he's shown me that he can be a number one goalie. He can, and he's going to have a more than decent defense in front of him. The problem for Seattle is who's going to score for them consistently, and that's where the issues are. There's not many teams that you could say, Alex, these days, dead nuts under team in their games. That's going to be Seattle. This is going to be a team that's probably going to have to win a lot of 2-1, 3-1, 4-1 type of games this season. Jaden Schwartz, Jared McCann could be good, but now they got him in a top-line role. I don't know if Jared McCann's a top-line guy as a forward. Same with Jordan Eberle. Good with the Islanders and Oilers in the past, but top-line role, top-line minutes, top-line scoring output, can he give you that? I'm not so sure. Johansson, Wenberg, and Donskoy on the second line. Brendan Tanev, Calle Yarncroke, Mason. That's actually a very good third line, good checking line. And then Ryan Donato. I like the fourth line too. Morgan Geekie, who was good with Carolina. Riley Sheahan. I like that fourth line, but that top six in particular, we're used to seeing teams in the league, Alex, with firepower, with huge big time offensive game breakers. I just don't see that really for Seattle in the top six. So the offense could be a little bit tricky to come by, but I think their blue line 1 through 6 is really steady, really solid, and they've got the goaltending with Grubauer and Drieger. So I think they're going to be bet on at times. They're going to be probably a good under team in their games, but it is going to be a situation where teams are going to have to work, if they're going to beat Seattle this year. Alex, what are your thoughts on the debut season for the Kraken?
Yeah, a lot of the pricing we're seeing with Seattle, it's got a lot to do with how Vegas played. The books aren't going to be caught off guard again with a expansion team that could possibly, make a playoff run and get all the way to a cup final. I don't think that's the case with Seattle, but they're just going to, play it safe than sorry. And so they're, lined as a middle of the pack team in the Pacific. And like I said, because of how bad the bottom of this division is, they will have a fighter's chance most nights, but they're going to have to play, like I said, with defense first, which is not really how most teams get it done in the Pacific. Usually we see a lot of offense. So it's going to be interesting. I think this is going to be a team to definitely look at some unders for sure, but I don't know where there will be some spots where they can catch teams, especially keep in mind, adding another, spot, another 2 nights to a West Coast road trip for certain teams, because now they got to stop in Seattle and then Vancouver or then Calgary. And, that's going to extend those road trips. I think that's how they're going to be able to get some wins. And we saw that with Vegas in their first year. They were able to catch some teams because of those extended road trips in certain spots. So I'll have them lightly circled for a couple of bet on spots. We probably won't be looking to fade them heavy either. Like I said, they're going to draw some money early, but they're definitely going to be a team that I think is going to get it done defensively. So looking for them to go under the total in most games.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good bet there, looking for some unders with Seattle. All right, the Calgary Flames and Daryl Sutter. Now, a full season of Daryl Sutter as the head coach of the Calgary Flames. So we'll see how this goes. But look, we didn't see that same Daryl Sutter and the immediate improvement from a team like we saw when he took over for LA. He took over for John Stevens years ago as head coach of the Kings, and right away Daryl Sutter's Kings team improved and won a couple of cups, and the rest is history. That did not happen. That did not happen in Calgary last year. They had an initial little burst when he first got there. They started to win. They went on a little streak, a little spurt, but it didn't last. And they ended up scuffling down the stretch and ultimately missing the playoffs, the Calgary Flames last year. And now the onus is going to be on Daryl Sutter to get the most out of a core that is underachieved. Let's be honest, this is a better team than they have shown in the last couple of years, and they just have not played up to that level. We'll see if Daryl Sutter can, and now they've made some changes. Mark Giordano being the biggest one. He's out. I like some of the moves they made, though. I will say that. How they translate, can they make them work is the question. Blake Coleman's the obvious one. Blake Coleman is a great, great forward, scores for you, big goals, clutch player. We saw him score some big goals for Tampa in the run to the Stanley Cup last year. He's physical. He's got some sandpaper to him. We see he's got a little nasty and mean streak to him as well. Doesn't mind, getting, throwing the body around. He doesn't mind dropping the gloves every now and then. So I like the addition there for the Calgary Flames. I don't love the Eric Goodbranson addition as much. I mean, he's a guy that's lumbering, doesn't skate all that well in his zone. So he does add a physical dimension, but that's not exactly something that's great. Jacob Markstrom, there's going to be a lot that falls on his plate. When you look at the blue line, Chris Tanev, solid. Noah Hannafin now is going to be asked, though, to play top pair minutes. And this is a guy that's kind of underachieved at times. Now he's going to be asked to play a lot of minutes nightly. Can he handle that? Zadorov, Rasmus Anderson, Juuso Valimaki, Oliver Shillington rounding out the blue line. Markstrom, Vladar, Dan Vladar, they get him from Boston to back him up. There's a lot of unknowns back there in terms of behind Markstrom. So they not only better hope Markstrom's healthy, but has a better year than he did last year. Let's be honest. It was not a good year for Jacob Markstrom last year in Calgary. His goals against went up. His save percentage went down. That was a very, very rough season. Nothing like he played in this last year with the Canucks. Not even close for Jacob Markstrom. But there's just too many unknowns, Alex. I mean, can Gaudreau be good for 82 games consistently? What about Tkachuk? Tkachuk was very good at times, and then he even went into slumps. That's an issue. Sean Monahan, I'm done trusting him to show up for me for an 82-game season after what I've seen the last couple of years. So for me, this is bet against until I'm proven wrong. I'm willing to leave the door open that a guy that's taken teams and improved teams like Daryl Sutter can get the most out of this group. But boy, I'm not saying that with any definitive confidence that, Calgary's going to be an improved team just because Daryl Sutter's there, because he didn't really move the needle or make them better down the stretch last year. They went right back in the tank again. I'm going to need to be proven that Calgary's better before I'm running out there to bet on them. At least to begin the season. Alex, what's your thoughts, Calgary Flames?
Yeah, I took this season points total under at 91.5. I think this is going to be a team that we'll be able to fade most of the year. I think they're going to miss the postseason, and it's got a lot to do with, like I said, the goaltending. If Markstrom, struggles or it can't stay healthy, you got Dan Vladar, and then you got Adam Warner as the third stringer. That could be really ugly, especially when we talk about, like I said, teams that have the firepower like Vegas, like Edmonton, teams that can lock you down defensively like Seattle. It's going to be a rough go for Calgary if they can't get things rolling. Like you said, how long can Sutter? Is he going to be one of these guys that can kind of adapt to the newer modern style, or is he going to just kind of keep his same old defensive ways, and then this team ends up going on a long losing streak, and then his voice just starts to get a little quiet and get lost in that locker room. So there just seems to be a lot more trending downward than upward for Calgary. So that's why I played their points total under, and I think they missed the postseason.
They need Gaudreau. They need Monahan to have full, consistent years. They can't have these 10, 15-game stretches during a year, Alex, where they're getting 1 or 2 points. That can't happen, or 2 goals. I mean, that can't happen. They're your game breakers. They're the guys you've invested in offensively. You've spent high draft capital with these guys. They've got to get it done for you. Enough with the excuses. And Giordano's not there to, as the captain anymore. There's going to be a new voice now in the dressing room. What about these guys stepping up and being the voice? Gaudreau, Monahan, you guys have been there long enough. Why don't you show some leadership? Why don't you get out there and produce and make an impact consistently, not once in a while when you feel like it? That's not the way it works. You got to do it every single night, and you don't always see it from these guys. And we've seen it long enough, too, from them that I got to see it from them, that they can be consistent, because it's been too long now that these guys have been just floating around on the ice, not, competing to the fullest extent that they can, not really scoring goals the way they're capable of. And I need to see that change from Calgary and those core players, Monahan, Gaudreau in particular, before I'm ready to invest in them. That's the way I see it with the Calgary Flames. All right, we've got 2 teams left here in the Pacific Division. Let's go to the Vancouver Canucks next up. A very, very intriguing team because, we've got 3 teams left, Edmonton and Vegas after this. But yes, the Vancouver Canucks, this is an intriguing team here, Alex, because look, everything went wrong last year. Remember 2 years ago, really good team, great year, second round of the playoffs. They had a really solid year, and we thought they'd be pretty decent last year still, and then everything went wrong. I mean, they got off to a bad start. COVID-19 struck the team and just completely derailed their year. I think their season was already over by that point with just how much they struggled, but that was the icing on the cake, if you will, for Vancouver, and just a miserable season, a season to forget. And they're going to look to turn that around. The question is, Alex, with anybody, that I've talked to about Vancouver, is this team more like the miserable disaster they were last year, or are they more like the team that was very good 2 years ago and was into the second round of the playoffs? Which is it, for this Vancouver Canucks team? I think they're going to be better. I like that they brought in Connor Garland. Look, that was one of Arizona's better players the last few years, Connor Garland. They bring him in from the Coyotes, along with Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Look, he's now in his 30s. I get it. A lot of wear and tear, but he's still a plus. I think he can still be a plus defenseman. He had a tough year last year, really poor year by his standards, but maybe a change of scenery is what he wanted. He wanted out of there. Arizona wanted to move on as well. I think that's a good thing for Ekman-Larsson to maybe have a bounce back year this year. They bring in Jason Dickinson, Luke Shen as well. Tucker Poolman, as a depth defenseman, he can be good. Again, he was playing more minutes than he probably should have with Winnipeg. Quinn Hughes, Tyler Myers, Ekman-Larsson, Poolman going to be your top 4 defensemen here this year for the Canucks. Of course, the big thing for them is they got the Elias Pettersson contract done in the offseason, which was big. So he's back in the fold, and he hopefully healthy for a full season as well because he had injuries last year. He'll center Brock Besser and JT Miller. That could be a very good. And look, JT Miller had a bad year too last year. Hopefully he can bounce back as well. They like Niels Höglander and his skill set, along with Bo Horvat. And again, Connor Garland's going to play on that second line. You've got Dickinson, Tanner Pearson, and watch out for Vasily Podkolzin here for the Vancouver Canucks. One of the prospects in their chain that's likely going to make the team at 20 years old here, selected 10th overall a couple of years ago. Played in the KHL with SKA St. Pete's over there, contributed pretty decently. I think he's going to be ready to give them a little punch offensively from the third line, which is going to be a good thing for this Canucks team. And then the fourth line with Alex Chiasson, Dowling, and Bailey. And then in net, I don't know if I love the Halak addition, Alex, because he didn't have a great year last year in Boston. Jimmy Murphy will be the first one to tell you. He did not like what he saw from Yaroslav Halak with the Bruins. Maybe he can bounce back, be better in a backup role for the Canucks this year. But I think Thatcher Demko, the more I watch Demko, the more I think, I can buy into him being a more than serviceable, potentially very good goaltender for this Vancouver team. I thought he played very well last year. It's kind of a breakout season for Demko. His numbers overall were very good last year. We'll see if he can carry it over from last year, but a 2.85 goals against average, 915 save percentage. In his starts, 16, 8, and 1. Pretty good. They actually, most of the games they won Vancouver, he was in net. So if he's healthy and he plays like he did last year, I think that gives Vancouver a chance to have an improved season. Are they a playoff team? I'm not saying that for sure, but are they improved from last year? I think so. And I think they're going to be closer to the team 2 years ago than the team that just had a year to forget last year. So I do have a bet on a buy sign on the Vancouver Canucks. I don't know if I'm ready to say playoff team yet, but I'm willing to say they'll be better and maybe be a bet on team in spots for sure. Alex, what do you think with the Vancouver Canucks?
Yeah, this is definitely a bet on team in my opinion. I think we're going to see a lot of overs, especially if, like you said, if we don't get the consistency right away from Demko and they have to rely on Yaroslav Halak at 36 years old. Could be a bit shaky. So the goaltending is questionable, to say the least. But I love the offense here. And I think some of the blue liners can step it up. Now that Quinn Hughes has finally gotten paid, Elias Pettersson's gotten paid, maybe these guys can get to that next level, that elite level. Because I think Pettersson can be an absolute superstar in this league. I've said that, for a couple of years now. So he's going to have to really take that step forward. So I think Vancouver's going to be in a good spot. And, like I said, last year they had the COVID issues. They had to travel cross country being in that Canadian division. So things are going to be a little bit closer to home now. Like I said, they got a natural rival in Seattle, and they, stay along the coast for the most part. So this is definitely going to be a more favorable schedule for Vancouver, most certainly. So I think that's going to help with them as well. So definitely some bet on spots throughout the season with the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, I think with the teams in the west part of Canada, Calgary and Vancouver are in the same boat. Non-playoff teams last year. Who do you have more faith in going into this season? I have more faith in Vancouver right now, just because Calgary, I've seen this core disappoint me too many times now to say, I'm really going to bank on Gaudreau and Monahan playing up to their potential consistently for a full year. I've seen enough that I can't bank on that. So that's why I think Vancouver's got the more open door, if you will, to move on through and be that improved team of those two teams out west that missed the playoffs. All right, speaking of Western Canada, we're going to stay there and move to the Edmonton Oilers. Of course, they're kind of a team that's been the Toronto West here in Canada. Trying to win that first round series with this core. That has been difficult for Edmonton. Thoroughly disappointing, Alex, last year. Let's be honest. I mean, the way they lost to the Jets in that series, terrible ending to their year. Disappointing ending. Can Dave Tippett's team win in the playoffs? Kind of like Toronto. They're going to be judged by playoff success going into this year more than anything. When you look at this Oilers team, they're coming back with still Mike Smith in net. That's the one thing that worries me still. I mean, he had a great year last year, but we're going to count on him once again. That's a question mark. Mikko Koskinen once again backing him up as well. But when you look at this team on defense, Darnell Nurse, outstanding year. I have no doubt he can play well again. I think he's here to stay as a very good, bona fide, solid top four defenseman in the NHL. And I'm not just saying that because he's from Hamilton. I'm saying that because he's a very good player. Tyson Barrie, much better than he was in Toronto. I think he fits this Edmonton team better. Duncan Keith, look, not Duncan Keith, of course, of the Cup era Blackhawks or winning those Cups. You'll never see that version of Duncan Keith again, but he'll give you a little leadership. He'll give you experience. He'll help the young guys out. Some of that stuff's invaluable for this young Oilers team. CC, Russell, Bouchard. I don't mind the blue line. Yeah, you worry about what happens if they get some injuries back there, but we'll worry about that if it happens. Up front, the top line is going to be terrific. I mean, Zach Hyman, you just ask Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner how good Zach Hyman was to play with on a top line. That's what Connor McDavid's going to experience this year. Just that guy is relentless. He's a dog on a bone when it comes to pounding the puck, relentless forecheck, physical, just finds ways to find open space for his line mates. And he can score too, Zach Hyman. And in fact, he's looking to score goals more and shoot the puck more this year. So Zach Hyman was a great addition for the Oilers. He's going to fit in well with McDavid on that top line. It's going to be outstanding. And it looks like Dave Tippett's going to split up McDavid and Draisaitl. Draisaitl is going to center the second line alongside the Nuge, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Kaylor Yamamoto, it looks like, although Yamamoto might start the year out. Warren Fogle, nice pickup from Carolina. I've always liked his game in a depth forward role. Devin Shore, Derek Ryan, Colton Sevier, in your fourth line. I like the forward group. The blue line's good enough. Can Mike Smith be as good as last year? And they'll be a very good team again. They'll have a good regular season. But again, it's going to come down to playoff success, just like with the Leafs, the other Canadian team, the Canadian team in the East. Like I say, Edmonton's kind of Toronto West. They could have a great regular season. It's going to be all for naught with the fan base if they don't step up in the postseason and start winning some series. But no, I like the Edmonton team. I think, again, they're going to score goals. The blue line, Mike Smith's play is the biggest wild card here. If he's like last year, that was not an automatic under team or over team last year, Edmonton. In fact, 30 unders, 24 overs last year, 30 and 24 to the under. I think that's going to move closer to 500, if not maybe a few more overs than unders. I'd like to buy into Mike Smith being as good as he was last year, but after the year he had last year and now another year older, I think there's only one way to go for him, and that's down. So I think Edmonton's going to have to score more because I think they might give up more because I don't know if the goaltending is going to be as good from Mike Smith. Alex, what's your thoughts on the Edmonton Oilers?
This is a team I had circled for first period overs. I think they're going to be at the top of the heap as far as that goes. And full game overs could be a different story because they're going to be lined awfully high. We're going to see a lot of 6.5s. We might even see 7s at some point. But I think they're going to give up goals early in games. Like I said, I don't trust that duo of Smith and Koskinen. Like I said, getting a year older and not necessarily sharper in Koskinen's case. Like I said, the offense. Yeah, if they can diversify the offense and try to get, more than just, Draisaitl and McDavid scoring at all times, that would be huge for them. But like I said, it always seems to kind of fall on those two guys' shoulders at some point. There'll be some value betting on them during the regular season, but I just don't see them finding a way to make it over that playoff hump. Like I said, even adding a Duncan Keith, he'll be a great, he'll do more in the locker room than he will on the ice at this point in his career. But I just don't think it'll be enough. They'll get to the postseason and they'll probably fade out first round, second round.
All right, our final team for the Pacific Division, the Vegas Golden Knights. Of course, they have been consistently, at or near the top of the division, the Western Conference, overall the last few years. Can they maintain that stature? It's going to be the big question here. When you look at the Golden Knights, obviously they're very disappointed with being knocked out by the Montreal Canadiens, obviously, last year in the playoffs. Really, their big offseason. Well, they lost Ryan Reeves too, but Ryan Reeves more of a grit, toughness physicality kind of player, depth forward. The big loss, of course, is Marc-Andre Fleury, which means in terms of goaltending for the Vegas Golden Knights, we're going to see what Robin Lehner's all about. He's been wanting to be a number one really since he's joined Vegas, and it's been always Peter DeBoer has had some level of, favoritism, if you will, to Lehner. Well, now Peter DeBoer, you know what they say, you sleep in the bed, now you got to lay in it. You make the bed, now you got to lay in it. This is the guy, this has been your number one guy, Robin Lehner. You clearly gave him more, I guess, of a benefit of the doubt throughout, the last couple of years than Fleury. Now's your chance. Now you're going to get him as a number one. Let's see how he does. What I like, though, is that if Lehner somehow doesn't play as well or struggles a bit, they went out and got a serviceable, reliable, solid backup coming off a great year in Laurent Brossoit. So that's definitely what I like for Vegas. Laurent Brossoit was more than good last year for the Jets when Hellebuck got a rest. So I like that for the Vegas Golden Knights, given Lehner a solid backup in Brossoit. Not much difference in the blue line at all. Alec Martinez, Alex Pietrangelo, Braden McNabb, Shea Theodore, Nick Hague, Zach Whitecloud, pretty much the identical 6 defensemen they had last year. Up front, not a big amount of change there either. When you're looking at it, especially the top 6, Max Pacioretty, Chandler Stevenson, Mark Stone, Jonathan Marchessault, William Karlsson, Riley Smith. I mean, it's the usual cast of characters here in that top 6 forward group. They're doing a little bit of a buy low, take a flyer, no pun intended. It's take a flyer figuratively and literally, getting Nolan Patrick here. This Vegas Golden Knights team, see how I did that? Literally and figuratively, the Vegas Golden Knights taking a flyer on Nolan Patrick, thinking that, look, this is a guy that was a first-round pick. Nothing went right for him in Philadelphia. He didn't fit in well. The injuries were a constant problem. He kind of underachieved. Look, that was never a great offensive team. That was never a team with a boatload of offensive upper echelon talent around him, other than, say, Giroux, Voracek, a couple others maybe. So let's see if a change of scenery goes his way here. It's really, let's see what he can do now. Maybe, a better overall team surrounding him. We're going to see maybe more from Nolan Patrick. So keep an eye on that early in the season. Let's see if he makes an impact. If he does, he may be someone you can look at for value spots in terms of their player props, Nolan Patrick. They bring in, of course, Evgeny Dodonov as well. I think he's changed his pronunciation from what I've heard in the preseason. One of those guys that's changed his pronunciation, but I think it's Dodonov now for the Vegas Golden Knights. He's been brought in as well for this group. We'll see how he fits in. He didn't exactly light it. There's a disappointing year by his standards last year. Let's call it like we see it. He is a guy that his main modus operandi is offense. And for Ottawa last year, that was just disappointing to see the way he played. He failed to even get to 20 goals for the first time in 4 years. Let's see if he can bounce back offensively. And he's going to need to, Alex. This team didn't get anything from their third and their fourth line offensively last year. Nothing. It's what killed them against Montreal. Danault and all those Canadians defensemen, forwards, they made it their mantra. Shut down Marchessault, Smith, Karlsson, Pacioretty, Stone. They did that. There was nothing coming from the third and the fourth line for Vegas when those top 2 lines got shut down. They need Nolan Patrick. They're going to need Evgeny Dodonov here this year to produce offensively. They're going to need it for this hockey team this year more than ever. And the fourth line too. I mean, there's questions there. You've got the likes of, you're going to have Krebs and Keegan Colasar, William Carrier, Nick Waugh, Brett Howden. Are those guys going to be offensive difference makers in a depth forward role? I'm not sure. So I actually have concerns about the offense. We saw the offense decline last year for Vegas. I'm not sure it's going to be leaps and bounds better this year. The blue line's still solid. I think we can count on trust Lehner. He's been very good at times. He's had the odd bad game, but you also have Laurent Brossoit to fall back on. I think there's an under team from a total standpoint this year. I think they'll play lower scoring hockey. Pete DeBoer wants it that way, believe it or not. He's looking to slow it down. I think this team is stronger and a little bit more sturdy with their blue line and with their goaltending necessarily than their forward group, because we saw the goals per game for Vegas drop off last year a little bit. And I think we might see more of that this year as well. So Vegas, and you're not going to get a bargain with Vegas. And to me, there's a few more question marks than normal with this group. So in spots at attractive prices to back the opponent, which you're probably going to see in a lot of Golden Knights games. Take some shots against Vegas. I'll probably be looking to do that. And I might be looking at some unders this year because I think lower scoring hockey might just be the way it goes here for the Vegas Golden Knights this year. Alex, what's your thoughts here on Vegas?
No, I agree. This is definitely going to be kind of like in the same vein with Colorado, where they're going to, win a bunch of games, but there's going to be times and spots where we can fade them because they're going to be, just high priced. And like I said, if Leonard does have some issues, they can bring in Brossoit, but is he going to be able to kind of capture that magic he's had the last year and a half playing in that backup role? We'll see when he does get a few starts how that goes. But like you said, yeah, the offensive firepower we saw from Vegas in the first couple of years, it has definitely changed. And now, like you said, DeBoer, got his style of team, and like you said, so they're going to be more defensive minded. It'll be interesting to see how they play against Seattle in that opener because, like I said, these are two teams that kind of built in that same style. It may not be much scoring in that particular contest, but yeah, there'll definitely be some spots I think to fade Vegas more than back.
Yeah, definitely. And especially on the road. I thought Vegas on the road, very disappointing last year. I mean, they feasted as they normally do at T-Mobile Arena. Great home record. But again, on the road, that team just had some bad games on the road, bad losses, just total difference in their play, at times away from T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. So they're going to have to iron that out. You can't be you obviously, if you have a strong home ice, take advantage of it. But I think they want to improve that road record a little bit as well this year. The Vegas Golden Knights, no question. Pacific Division futures in terms of win totals, make or miss the playoffs, win the division, anything like that. Alex, did you bet anything with the Pacific just to recap?
Just the Calgary Flames under for the point total.
All right, just that Calgary under. For me, I like Grubauer to win the Vezina 12-1. I mentioned that. I like that. In terms of win the division, I'll mention those now in the Pacific. I'm not laying minus 200. I don't think it is a for sure thing that Vegas Golden Knights win the Pacific Division. I'd be looking at Edmonton plus 310. Yeah, I mean, I don't hate that. Plus 310 with Edmonton. I'd go really down the board and maybe Vancouver 20-1. Take a shot. That might be something worth sprinkling just a couple of bucks on. Because remember, this is a team that was a playoff team 2 years ago. I think they're going to more resemble that team. I'm buying into Thatcher Demko as a very solid number one goalie for this team. So not a whole division in terms of things I love in the division futures market or make them miss the playoffs, but definitely I think 20-1 there, Vancouver to win the division, worth a small flyer. I certainly wouldn't be looking to lay minus 200 with the Vegas Golden Knights to win the division. As far as Cup futures, Western Conference futures, I'll mention a couple right here. Winnipeg, not only to win the Central, but Western Cup. Chicago, not only to win the Central, but Western Cup. I agree with Alex there on that one. And as far as the Pacific goes, I've got Edmonton not to win the division, but I do have Edmonton win the West and the Cup because, if not now, when? There was a bitter ending against Winnipeg. I think Zach Hyman's going to be a huge impact for them definitely this year. So I don't mind looking at Edmonton to win the West and the Cup. But again, not as strong on the overall Cup futures on the Western Conference side compared to the Eastern Conference side. Before we wrap it up, Jimmy Murphy couldn't join us today, but he did want me to mention what he likes this year. I'll list what he's on right now in terms of Western Conference teams. He likes the Minnesota Wild. I don't know if he's doing that because he just likes Terry Edelman so much, but Jimmy Murphy likes the Minnesota Wild to win the Central Division, with the Chicago Blackhawks being his sleeper choice, a dark horse to win the Central. He also likes the Winnipeg Jets maybe as a dark horse in the Central Division as well. He likes the Colorado Avalanche to win the Western Conference. In fact, he says in the message to me, not just liking it, loving the Colorado Avalanche here to win the Western Conference, and that is currently plus 190. They are currently the odds-on favorite to win the West, but that is what Jimmy's liking. And in the Pacific Division, he is on Edmonton, plus 310 to win the Pacific Division this year. And just like Alex and I, he also thinks Vancouver will be an improved team and a potential dark horse in the Pacific Division. So there you go, guys. That is your NHL season betting preview shows. We did the East yesterday, the Western Conference today. I hope you enjoyed it. By the way, shout out to everybody in our chat. Nate Dog 420, Cheshire Cat, Let's Go Wild Picks, We appreciate it from everybody. Nate Dog 420, Brian Watson. Of course, we've had some new Birdie. Thank you for the kind words, giving us kind words about the show. Ron Crawford, a couple people that just Canadian Capper 72, people that just hopped in the chat after I mentioned everybody earlier. We appreciate that, no question, and supporting the show and joining us right here on the Ice Guys Western Conference betting preview show. And of course, remember, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, sign up for an account, use the promo code THPN, support DraftKings because they support the Hockey Podcast Network and they support this show. So make sure you take advantage of DraftKings. Again, now's the time. NHL season begins next week. Download the DraftKings app, bet boost, deposit bonuses, weekly specials, weekly incentives. They've got the dollar bet promotion going on right now that I mentioned on yesterday's show for the start of the NHL season. So take advantage of that. So use the DraftKings Sportsbook app, download it, sign up for an account, and use the promo code THPN. All right, that will wrap up this Western Conference betting preview show. We will be back with you and on Tuesday, October 12th. It's the opening day of the NHL season. We'll be starting the 7 days a week format of the Ice Guys. Tuesday, the show will be 2 p.m. Eastern, Monday to Friday, noon Eastern, Saturday and Sunday, same times as it was last year. And we will start our 7 days a week sojourn breaking down every single NHL game, regular season and playoffs from a betting perspective all season long right here on the Ice Guys. So thank you very much for joining us, everybody. For Alex B. Smith, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great weekend, and we will see and talk to you again Tuesday, 2 p.m. Eastern, for another edition of the Ice Guys presented by the Hockey Podcast Network.